Welcome to B1 lesson 32. We're going to be looking at what we call clauses of contrast, purpose, and reason. Remember, we first did an introduction to clauses, where we saw clauses of purpose and clauses of reason in A2. Now at this time, we do a combination of another thing, which is a clause of contrast, in addition to clause of purpose and the clause of reason. The clause of contrast first. When I say a clause of contrast, it shows opposite ideas in the same sentence. Means what? Means like we have two contradicting ideas in the same sentence together. A clause is a group of words having subject and a verb. So when I say now a clause of contrast, it's just that I'm having two opposite ideas in the same sentence. Let's see the common words we use while linking those two opposite ideas. We use words like although, though, even though, while, whereas. When I use these words, I use them to join two different ideas which are totally opposite or different. I can say, although it was raining, we went out. You see, we have raining and going out. Being the action of raining happening, and then the action of going out also happening. Although it was raining, we went out. Let's see the structure of contrast clauses. When we have a clause of contrast, the main structure, we take although, or though, or even though, then we add clause. That's the first structure. The second structure, what do? We begin with a clause. After the clause, remember a clause is a group of words having subject and verb. Clause, after clause, we add while or whereas. While or whereas, then we add clause again. The first one, we just start with although, or even though. We put a clause. After that first clause, we put comma, then we add another clause. Now the second structure, we take a clause plus while or whereas plus clause. What's the difference? The first one, when we start with although, though, even though, we put the first clause, we put comma, then we put the second clause. Remember, in each sentence we have two clauses. Now, in this first one, we are putting clauses after one another. But in this second structure, we start with a clause, while or whereas, then another clause. Let's see examples. Even though he was tired, comma, he continued working. Even though he was tired, comma, he continued working as another clause. The second, she likes coffee, comma, while I prefer tea. The first one, we started with a linking word, then clauses. The second structure, we started with, let me try to highlight what I'm trying to say here. I started with a linking word here. After a linking word, I have the first clause and I have the second clause here. That's the first structure, which is this one, which is the first structure. Then the second structure, what do I have? I have a clause, I have linking word, which is while, then I have the second clause, which is here as the second structure. Let's proceed. Now let's go to what we call clause of purpose. What is a clause of purpose? When I say a clause of purpose, I mean a clause that explains why something is done. You eat. Why? You study English. Why? You are learning English. Why? You go to work. Why? It answers the question why. Simply why. When they ask you a why question, the best answer is to use a clause of purpose. What are the words that we use when we are trying to make a clause of purpose meaningful? We use words like to, in order to, so that, in order that. She studies hard to pass the exam. You see, I put this word, she studies hard. Yes, that's a statement. Then why? To as a common word while joining the reason, then pass the exam as the reason for doing that. Let's see the structure of the purpose clauses. We have a main one of using to or in order to plus V1. She or he dash 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 to blah blah blah. To cook, you put just a verb. To cook, to sleep, to walk, to talk, to sing, like that. In order to be, in order to go, in order to welcome, in order to speak, in order to talk, in order to chat, like that. That's the first structure. Use to or in order to, then you add base verb. The second structure, you use so that or in order that. When you use so that or when we use in order that, you need to first use a subject before a verb. Let's see step by step. He whispered so that no one then heard him. You see, you first start with a clause first. Here you put a clause, then we will continue with the so that. We put a subject no one. The subject was no one, then the verb was heard him. Here verb to hear, then past heard. Because the clause also is in the past, also the verb was put into the past. That's why I just put here verb. I did not specify if it is V1, V2, V3. Just depends to the structure of the clause that you have. We left early to avoid traffic. We start with a clause. We left early, then we put to. We left early, then we add to, then base verb was avoid. We left early to avoid as the V1 traffic. Now let's see a clause of reason. What is a clause of reason? When I say clause of reason, what do I mean by that? A clause of reason explains the cause of something. What is the cause? What caused this? What caused the failure? What caused the delay? You are late. What was the cause? What caused that? She is sick. What is the cause of her illness? I feel sleepy. What is the cause of my sleepiness? Why do I feel like sleepy? Why do I feel that? What is the cause? Differentiate the clause of reason and the clause of purpose and the clause of contrast. Purpose is the reason why you do something. You sleep, yes. Why do you sleep? That's a clause of purpose. Then a clause of reason comes in like, what is causing you to sleep? Not the reason you are sleeping, no. What is the cause of that? In this clause, we use linking words like because, since, and as. Because, since, as. We stayed home because it was raining. We stayed home. What was the cause? the cause was the rain. It was raining. And remember when we were in the clause of contrast, we say that we went out although it was raining. Yes. Let's see the structure of the reason clauses. The main structure uses because, since, or as plus clause. Or you can start with a clause plus because plus or since or as plus another clause. Let's see the difference between the two. The first here we said she was late because the bus broke down. She was late because the bus broke down. The second said since it was cold, we stayed inside. Let's see now, based on the structures, what's the difference. The first one said she was late. That's first. This is a clause. Then we have a linking word, which is because. Then the bus broke down. This is another clause. This is the one we have used in the first example. The structure is the one that we have used. We have started with a clause, because, another clause. Clause, because, then another clause. The second, since it was cold, we stayed inside. Since it was cold, we stayed inside. Let's see that. Since is a linking word. It was cold is a clause. We stayed inside is another clause. You put since, then clause, another clause, comma, another clause. Remember the structure of the clauses of contrast. Remember we said that we can use although, even though, plus clause, comma, and then another clause. Or we can start with a clause, while, or, whereas, plus another clause. Just the same like that. The difference is that the linking words that we use are different. Let's see the comparison between clause of contrast, clause of purpose, and clause of reason. Clause of contrast shows what? They show opposition. Clause of contrast shows opposition using although, while, whereas, though, even though, like that. When I go into the clause of purpose, it shows intention. Why are you doing this? We saw that we can use linking words like to, so that, in order to, in order that. We saw all those linking words. When I go into the clause of reason, it shows cause. What is the cause of that? What is the cause? We use words like because, since, words like that. Each clause answers a different question. They answer different question. This one answers what caused that. This answers the question, why did it happen? This one is when you are expressing the ideas. Let's fill in the blanks here. You're going to complete the sentence using the correct linker. When I say linker, I mean the linking word. If it is a clause of contrast, clause of reason, clause of purpose, depending on the sentence how it is. Dash dash, it was late. He continued working. She saved money, dash dash, buy a new phone. We stayed inside, dash dash, it was raining. He is very rich, dash dash, he lives simply. They whispered, dash dash, nobody could hear them. Again, fill in the blanks, choose the correct word here. I stayed home, dash dash, I was sick. Dash dash, she was tired, she finished her work. We left early, dash dash, avoid traffic. He enjoys football, dash dash, his brother prefer basketball. She spoke quietly, dash dash, wake the baby. Let's fill in the blanks here. What do we have? Dash dash, it was expensive, he bought it. She wears glasses, dash dash, she can see clearly. They cancelled the trip, dash dash the weather was bad. I like tea dash dash my friend prefers coffee. He worked overtime dash dash earn extra money. Fill in the blanks, choose the correct linker dash dash it was raining, the match continued. She studied hard dash dash passed the exam. We stayed home dash dash we were tired. He is shy dash dash his sister is very outgoing. They left early dash dash catch the first bus. Let's do the quiz here. You're going to choose the best option in the linking words that we have learned. Dash dash he was tired. He kept working. She whispered dash dash nobody heard her. We cancelled the meeting dash dash there was no time. I enjoy music dash dash my brother prefers silence. They trained hard dash dash win the competition. So I hope you have cleared everything. Ciao ciao.